Chapter 5, Discipline. Okay, so this is the last of the uses of nature that Emerson puts forth for us to chew on. In this discipline section, what he's really getting at here is the idea, not discipline that it's going to, tell us, get us in trouble or that it's going to punish us or anything, but that basically nature, one of the gifts that it gives us are lessons. Okay, lessons, that kind of discipline, that it gives us, disciplines like, physiology, disciplines like biology, disciplines like physics, disciplines like humanism, these kinds of disciplines, these kinds of ways of understanding, ways of seeing the world. As he says, every property of matter is a school for the understanding. That this is another thing that nature gives us. Okay, so it has some really big ideas here. He says, our dealing with sensible objects is a constant exercise in the necessary lessons of difference, of likeness, of order, of being and seeming, of progressive arrangement, of ascent from particular to general, of combination to one end, of manifold forces. Okay, that might seem like a lot to wrap your head around, but really what he's saying is that every single day, our sort of experiencing things in the world is giving us lessons in terms of how to comprehend what's going on and how to distinguish between one thing over here, something else over here, this thing over here, that thing over here. He says, what tedious training day after day, year after year, never ending to form the common sense. That basically nature is constantly teaching us, okay? Not just commodity, not just beauty, not just language, but how the world works. Okay, that nature is constantly giving us lessons and instruction on the way that nature functions, the way that we should function within it, the ways that we are part of it, the ways that we can use it, the ways that we can sort of try to figure things out, and that this is yet another thing that nature provides for us. He says this really great part. He says, the wise man shows his wisdom in separation, in gradation. His scale of creatures and of merits is as wide as nature. The foolish have no range in their scale, but suppose every man is as every other man. Okay, so he's basically saying that the wise person learns what could be called discernment. That this discernment is something where we learn the ability to judge and find gradation, find this stuff goes over here, that stuff goes over here, and our ability to sort and comprehend is something that nature necessarily is giving us. Okay. Later on, he goes in to say some other lessons that nature has provided. For example, nothing in nature is exhausted in its first use. In God, every end is converted into a new meanings. Thus, the use of commodity regarded by itself is mean and squalid. Okay, that basically this is the idea of an extended timeline, that we're constantly being given new stuff. Nothing in nature is exhausted in its first use. Okay, like you cut down the tree, with that tree you make a table. Then the table starts to go bad. You take that table, you can grind it up and turn it into paper. And once that paper goes bad, then you can recycle it into new paper. And then when that paper goes bad, you can burn it in a fire and turn it into smoke and carbon that then will become part of the soil that will, you see where I'm going with this. It's very sort of Whitman-esque, and written before Whitman wrote Song of Myself. That sort of idea that everything in nature continually provides more opportunities. Okay, then he gets into a really sort of beautiful idea of what is a farm but a mute gospel. That this sort of lesson, okay, that via looking out there at the landscape, that is a gospel in and of itself, which is a very, very beautiful idea. And he sort of ties that back to this idea of Xenophanes, who was a famed Greek philosopher. It says Xenophanes complained in old age that look where he would, all things hastened back to unity, and that if you could look out at the world, you could see this unity everywhere, and that the farm is in and of itself a mute gospel, that each particle is a microcosm and faithfully renders the likeness of the whole. That this, unity is bringing everything together, and that is sort of one of the disciplines that is sort of brought to us, and sort of is given to us in a fantastic way. Then, sort of in opposition to this, he does posit this idea that words are kind of a problem. Okay, like he uplifted language in an earlier section, saying that language was a good thing, that it was something that was derived from nature. But here he says, words are finite organs of the infinite mind. They cannot cover the dimensions of what is in truth. They break, chop, and impoverish it. And this gets back to the idea that language, like all language, is built around shortcoming. Okay, that if you have one word, that word is necessarily exclusive and exclusionary. Okay, that if you have a word table, and then there are certain things that you would consider table and other things that you wouldn't consider table, and that when you do that, you create duality, you create separation, you create a binary, and that this binary detracts from unity, and therefore language can sort of end up diminishing um, the truth as it is seen. But ultimately, in this discipline section, he comes to this idea that everything is ultimately one, and that via this oneness and the recognition of these lessons that are given to us by nature, we can see how it all comes together. He says, in the one thing he does rightly, he sees the likeness of all which is done rightly, and that's a lesson we can learn from nature.